how did our preseason predictions go? Did we serve you well or lead you astray? It's time for Dingers.
This is Dingers, way more than fantasy baseball. We keep it real when we talk and knock it straight out the park. Let's see the stats. What's the average draft position? What kind of plays you making? Check the wins above replacement. Check the lineups and the points. This I gotta see. What's your path to victory? Are they aiming for a dynasty? Get points going head to head. Please don't do me no favors. We're always watching waivers. Ain't no minor league. This is major. Yeah, Dingers. Let's go.
Welcome to Dingers, the only fantasy baseball podcast for smart people. It's not just Yordan Alvarez that wins you championships. That's why week in and week out we're delivering tips and strategies to help you live that straight up OG lifestyle. As always, Tyler Childs joined by Robbie Baseball from the Murder Room. What's happening, Robbie?
So many things are happening. I drove home through snow tonight, Ty. Through snow. It is fantasy baseball off season. I know we're still got MLB playoffs, but it's fantasy baseball off season already. So
I mean, what I'm hearing is window beers.
Oh, you know what? I was just looking
window
at
beer season.
We are getting close now. As my wife said to me, I said, "Do you want me to put your winter tires on tomorrow night?" And she said, "No, it's going to be in the 20s," which I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit off the top of my head, but comfortable like over the weekend and into next week. So she said, "No, that's fine." But I've got the heater on, like the little fire thing down here. I'm looking out the window, wishing I could have put them outside tonight. But I've got a trio of brews when it's time. So, but yeah,
man, you're old. The space heater, Matt.
I know.
In the background.
got my shawl on. Actually, I'm wearing one of my many loser hoodies that I bought over the past few months. I'm wearing the Dodgers hoodie, and we know they ended up like my fantasy teams did, a lot of hype and no championships. So,
well,
yeah, I did win one, I guess.
All right, well, subtle brag, but
yeah.
There's a new jersey that I'm going to have to order that I just discovered yesterday. Indie ball team Florence in Kentucky called the Yalls. That's going to be a must order. Florence Yalls, and it is a phenomenal jersey. Shout out to the Florence Yalls for keeping it real. But Steve Delabar, former Florence Yall, as a fun Blue Jay touch point.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, there you go. So
go ahead.
They indie ball? Are they indie ball?
Yeah, I think they might have been affiliated at one time. I didn't look far enough or long enough to figure out, but I think they were, and now are indie ball after the Armageddon of minor league teams.
Right. There's been a lot of shifting of like indie, semi-pro, whatever, the last several years. But yeah, I know. I mean, we've got a local in Canada here. We've got the hockey that are doing that, and then there's the Plattsville Lakers, Ty, who you probably don't even know were once the London Lakers, and that was like a junior A tier 2 team, but like a renegade league, not like one licensed through the CHL, which is the Canadian Hockey League. So the junior one, that's like the, it's a poorly run organization that gets a lot of praise. They do everything but develop players. You have to be amazing in order to do well in the system. You can't suck and then be developed. Anyway, they went from London and then they moved to I can't remember where else. Then Plattsville, once COVID was on, and Plattsville's like a speck of a town that I play Sunday night hockey in. And they were the type of team that would bring in Russians that the kids would pay, or the parents would pay like $20,000+ a year to have these, kids playing under 21. And then they switched over the off season. Now they're a senior league team, but it's like full contact senior. So if you've ever like watched that, it's basically guys that graduated junior or went away to college or did whatever, and they're coming back and they're working full-time jobs and then putting in a couple practices a week and then beating the absolute piss out of people in these hockey games on weekends. So yeah, that's what's going on with the teams in Canada. But Kentucky Yalls, I like that. What is it? Kentucky Yalls?
Florence Yalls.
Florence Yalls. Okay.
Yeah, it plays. But what they do well in Kentucky is they drink.
A long time ago, someone decided to put stuff in glass bottles. In some of these bottles, they put juice or milk, and that was stupid. today, only alcohol and a few other products remain in the containers from the gods. It's time for beers and bourbon, because good advice only comes in a bottle.
That wasn't a bottle, was it?
No, I still have my screw top. So we've had a rough stretch of trying to schedule episodes. So this is now older Forester. It was originally just old. Yeah, it is. It's aged 2 weeks longer than it should.
Jeez, yeah, that was so sharp. I was only like half looking at you. I'm like, no way, that was the bottle. I switched it up though. I've got Coors original. And the very quick second tangent off is the reason that I have this is that several weeks ago, my kid and I, after we were done fishing, we're driving home. Some guy had a tire on his boat trailer that had exploded very close to our house. I pulled over to try to help him, and I couldn't, but I said, you know what? I live 5 minutes down the road. I went and got all my gear, came back. We fixed it, got the tire off, had to cut it off with a Sawzall because it was like wrapped around his brakes. Anyway, he thanked us a lot so we could still go out to good old Lake Huron, Great Lake. And then while I was at work on Sunday, he dropped off a case of Coors to say thanks. So
you're basically like rural Ontario MacGruber.
Yeah, man, I got it off. I helped the guy. And it was a Sawzall, a jack, and a lot of prying. And yeah, we got it off and found a stray cat that day. Good times. But anyway, speaking of stray, I've gone astray too many times. So anybody who's curious, if you want, since it's the off season, hopefully we've got a lot of returning listeners and we pick up some new ones because, Dynasty based fantasy baseball podcast. That's what we are, Dingers. It took us 7.5 minutes to say it, but that's okay. And you can find us if you've got questions, comments, concerns about your team, your roster, or things you'd love for us to cover this offseason. Hit us up at Dingers Pod, all one word. On Twitter, you can hit up Ty at Turney Boss, or myself at Robbie Baseball 1, and that's the numerical 1. And we are happy to help you improve your fantasy teams. I also have a website, robbiebaseball.com. We put some stuff from the podcast up there. I also put fun, exciting things that I'm working on when I carve out the time to post it. A lot of things get started. Very few things get finished and then posted. But, hobby.
Yeah, that's right. So talking baseball news, I mean, we've kind of drifted past a lot of the baseball news that's coming. Some of the new rules coming in for next year. The larger base thing, the more I think about that, the more I'm excited about that concept. I'm not gonna lie, because
what excites you the most about it?
I mean, size matters, but at the end of the day, like if you look at how many stolen bases are challenged in a year and the number of people that slide off of that bag, if they got some more surface area to A, get there earlier, and B, not slide off, which is also the stupidest rule in the world. Right. But like, I like what that can do for the game, because like, if you just look at the number of close calls that exist either on doubles or on stolen bases, like there's probably 100 stolen bases in a season that are back in play, right? There's probably 30 to 50 doubles that are back in play. So as much as like we don't recognize the importance of that little extra girth, it matters. And so
there's a lot of we're borderline several inappropriate things at the moment, and I am steering clear.
So at the end of the day, these are things that they change the game, right? In the strategy of it. And when you pair that with the 2 pickoff rule, which is phenomenal, like whoever came up with this idea, I am a giant fan of, because
I feel like sorry, don't you feel like, Ty, this was like a boardroom discussion and someone was like, I hate it. You can't do it. You're not allowed. It's a balk. And then somebody else was on the exact opposite side. I think it's amazing gamesmanship. It's this, it's that. And they eventually whittled it down to like 2. And then someone's like, I hate that. And the other guy was, I hate that. And they're like, well, then it must be perfect. No one's happy. You can only do it twice. and then they're like, on to the next thing.
But the strategy here is so good.
Yeah.
Like from the runner's side, like if you bait the guy, right, twice, you get a clean start on first move. And then pretty much guaranteed slide step fastball is coming, right? Like ball in play, hit and runs back again. Like there's just so much good here, right? Or they got to go straight pick off and then, or I mean pitch out, sorry. And then there's just so much that can happen with this rule. Like it's just the it's a fire starter. Like it's gonna be great for the game. Those two rules I'm very excited for. I don't care about the pitch clock. Like, pitch clock for me is irrelevant. They're gonna find a way to slow the game back down. There is gamesmanship to your point earlier, but I don't know. Like the other ones I love. I love the shift, what it's gonna do for the game. I hate that the players can't adjust for the shift. But like the argument that I've had, because I've had this conversation with a lot of people over the last year, the thing that I constantly fall back on is everybody's like, well, Ted Williams could do it, right? Because they used to shift pretty hard on Ted Williams, right? Well, guess what? He faced 85-mile-an-hour fastballs with mediocre curveballs, right? Like the game wasn't the same back then. And yes, he was a great hitter. And same with some of the older hitters. But like facing a 92-mile-an-hour slider, like that didn't exist. Not like 15 years ago, it didn't exist, right? So like adjusting to that, I like what it does for the game. I hate that there's not a better alternative, but I think it is necessary given the advancements on the pitching side.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on the shifter, it's a failure of baseball to not make it okay because teams just didn't do, or players, however you want to shuffle that deck. Players didn't make the adjustment on the offensive side. They chose to try to hit through it, hit harder, and then we can get into the launch angle and all the other crap with that. Or we could just say that teams decided to rely so heavily on the shift that it made a negative impact. Instead of just becoming part of the game, it became a distraction. And that's unfortunate. The pitch clock thing too, I agree. It's a way that they're going to try to sell it to casual fans or to moms and dads that you can bring your kids to the game because it's not going to take that long because we've got, things in place. But it's not going to increase offense like when the NBA brought in the shot clock. That's not what it's for. It's to speed things along. And like you said, they're going to find other ways to do it. They might, we've already got like TV timeouts and hockey and all these other things that slow it down because you bring in money from advertising, much like we were talking about having multiple playoff series or two different playoff series going on the same day in MLB because you got, big ass contracts with TV on. But
and one thing that I haven't really heard, maybe I don't understand the full part of the rule, but with the shift, like what stops a team from pulling the left fielder, putting him in the deep spot of the hole and moving their shortstop or third baseman out into left field?
I think you can do basically what you could do is you could shift you could have, let's say you wanted to shift through second. If you got a lefty coming up and you want to shift them, you can move like you just said, move your right fielder into the gap, put your center fielder over, and then have your left fielder come and cover center, or have your left fielder go to right field, whatever. But I think I don't believe you can move the infielder, and that's it. That's all it is. You basically can't have your shortstop or your second baseman start on the opposite side of second base.
But that's what I'm saying. Like if you just put him to the outfield.
You can do it with the outfield. Yeah, I think you're right. But at the same time, I think that creates an outfield, a potential for like inside the park home runs if somebody can go oppo. But we already thought that was going to create a disadvantage by making first or third base open, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, like I just want to see Devers playing balls off the monster in Boston. I think that would just be interesting. Just it's like Manny back out there again. Like, I mean, I'm here for that.
I don't think they're going to move back. But anyway, okay. So tonight's episode, for everybody who was curious, it's our circle back episode. Things that we actually discussed week 1 of this season. We've been doing this podcast. Ty, I think this is our 4th off season. I think that's what we're heading into, right? We were a pre-pandemic podcast. We started out before the germs, and this year before the season started, we went through the list that we're about to recap now of pick your guy or your team or whatever the scenario was that we went through, and we're just gonna check ourselves here because when I put this together, I was pretty sad with some of the things that happened here. But are you ready to rock and roll?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the idea is who's better by season's end. So this is for fantasy purposes, but as you'll start to see as some of the names go, it's pretty easy. Strasburg versus Verlander. We said Verlander, thank goodness, and it was no contest. Strasburg's body is not gonna let him do the Randy Johnson that we were hoping he was going to do with his career. And Verlander, I mean, holy crap! The season. I think there are several guys who owe their season success to either drafting, trading for, winning via auction, trading, whatever, some type of prospect for Verlander, because his year, in my mind, has been incredible. That return.
Well, I mean, he's a first ballot guy. Like, I mean, he is who he is, but it is incredible. Like the shift once he's arrived in Houston, and like the sustainability and in the recovery. Like the one thing that I find fascinating with Verlander is, unlike a lot of other guys, he came right back to his location, like spotted up almost immediately, right? Most guys coming back from Tommy John don't have that experience. So really interesting that he just got out there and just did it. Just speaks to how good he really is.
Yeah, like a true. I'm just trying to pull it up here for our 8x8 home league. He was the number 6th player in 8x8 in a league that counts quality starts. What are there other categories here? Saves and holds are combined as 1. Walks per 9, hits per 9, ERA, strikeouts, wins, losses. Those are the 8 pitching categories. He was 6th overall, so that includes the hitters. But his stat line was 175 innings, 18-4 record, 185 Ks, a 1.75 ERA, and 21 quality starts. Yeah. Wow. Like,
yeah, I mean, a runaway Cy Young. Like, I mean, no knock on like Dylan Cease, who is had a great season himself, but it's Verlander by a mile in the Cy Young race. So, I mean, this one, if we would have picked Strasburg, and if we would have picked Strasburg, we're idiots anyway. But at the same time, like we made the right choice here. So good on us. Yeah. Moving on to a more difficult one. That was kind of a dumpster fire. The 2 bullpen arms that had injury plagued seasons last year, Ken Giles and Kirby Yates. The notes you added here, Robbie, and I think they're accurate. It's obviously Yates based on not being cut by his team immediately after returning from injury. And I mean, that's, I think, as simple as it is. A bit disappointing for both of them overall. Like, I think all of us thought both of these guys would see some more innings. If you've drafted Kirby Yates back-to-back years, you're likely like hate hearing his name and will never draft him again. But again, this is the thing we do with injuries, right? Like, this is a part of fantasy baseball. You have to be cautious, and it is a risk when you take on these guys.
Yeah, Kirby Yates, 7 innings pitched, 6 Ks, 5.14 ERA, 2 save hold combined. And Giles just had such a weird year. Both guys really did, because they were both expected to be back earlier in the year. And then Giles came back 4 1/3 innings pitched. Well, actually, you know what, Ty? Maybe statistically, Giles has pulled it off, because 6 Ks, 0 earned runs, but no save holds, which I guess is why I gave it to Yates by the slim margin. But Giles is now in San Francisco, and I don't know what's going to happen as far as his 2023 season. But he, to me, is just a complete punt, unless it's some type of 5 RP points league and you want to take him as your 5th/ bench RP, like Yates as well, I would say. It's unfortunate, because both of these guys have been leaders on championship teams, both in MLB. Well, I guess maybe not Yates, but Giles, as well as fantasy teams, because they have put up numbers. They've had years for us, but it just seems like those, I mean, the pocket of success now, I think the reasonable expectation, I should say, is now like a contributor. That's it.
Well, nothing. I mean, Giles' big thing is that he's a nut job, and Seattle didn't need him, right? I mean, that's the reality. Landing in San Francisco, like, he's got a 23 team option, and I actually don't know how this works, because he was released and claimed. Is that contract still in play? I believe it is.
But I don't know. Is this Giles you're talking?
Yeah, he's a 23 option.
It depends on if Giles was picked up through waivers, then yes, it still exists. If he was cut and then signed, which I honestly don't remember what happened with him. Like, if he was DFA'd and then freed, declined the assignment, whatever the heck it would have been, then yeah, he's back in the free agent pool.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was claimed. But either way, I like him in San Francisco going into next year. Like, I think there's no injury that's really going to hold him back. It's not like he needs to throw 200 innings. Even if he's the 7th inning guy in San Francisco, still could carry some huge value in your safe hold leagues. The strikeout numbers should be there. if he's healthy, right? So like I like the upside. I think if you look at bounce back guys, he's got to be a candidate in the RP category for me.
I would much rather have off-season reports that Steven Strasburg is going to become a relief pitcher than I would draft or trade for Ken Giles.
Ooh, see, I'm in the other one. Like I'm not touching.
Yeah,
I'm not touching Strauss. Like for me, if we were asked this exact same question again at the beginning of the next season, like Giles or Yates, it's Giles by 100 miles.
Oh, did you see what he did there? Anybody fan weekend, 100-mile Giles? All right. Anyway, so we might have a conversation next year, but first, both guys have to be on rosters. The next one up, I think at the time, it was not seen as close as, or not even close, but it was seen more as it's going to be obvious than what it actually worked out, which was Chris Sale or Jameson Taillon. And I mean, we said Sale, like we both agreed on Sale, but Taillon not only had a nice season for himself, but also has now earned some trust for me for the first time since 2016 when I had him in our home league, drafted him. I don't know, too early, like I did with most of the guys back in 2016. Still doing it now. But Sale only had 5 2/3 innings, and you don't need to worry about the rest because he's hurt and his body, much like Strasburg, letting him down. I didn't mean the victory lap thing in fantasy baseball podcasting is epic now, but this is one that you get to celebrate because you've never liked Sale. I mean, he still had however many years of elite success, but now you're right. Yep. So you got that.
I mean, it's better that I'm right now that he's an AL East guy. It makes right. It better, right? It's the appropriate timeline for this to work out. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any illusions that Sale's a better pitcher. But the injury certainly didn't allow for the Red Sox to do anything special, and it certainly didn't, bolster Sale's legacy. So yeah, I mean, if he doesn't get back on track, like this is gonna be what people remember him for, was that he had a couple great years and then just disappeared, right? And so he's entering that category of like one more year, and he's a trouble guy, right?
Which is crazy. David Price, the guy basically that he replaced in Boston, is who he could very well become. That elite lefty, and just to put a bow on Taillon here, his most innings pitched career, I believe, 177.1 this year, 14 wins, 12 quality starts, and a sub-4 ERA. Now the Ks per 9 was not, 1. He was 151 Ks and 177 innings, but over the last 2 years, Ty, he's pumped north of 300 innings, 144 and a third last year, 8 and 6. Had a better K per 9 last year, closer to 1 an inning, but 8 quality starts. I think he's just going to be a guy moving forward. Somebody that is, I don't know, I think he's got a year left, at least a year left in pinstripes, but certainly somebody to think about for next year. And then, we got the playoffs to see if he can become a legend in Yankee lore or not. But
and an interesting thing really quick on Sale, he does have an opt-out after this season.
He's not taking that.
I don't think he will either, considering he's got 27 and a half, and 20. The only thing I'll say there, Robbie, is that Boston kind of sucks, and they don't exactly have reinforcements coming. So if JD Martinez opts out, I think this becomes a really interesting opt-out, because if Rodon doesn't opt out, Sale becomes the best lefty on the market.
Oh, I don't think that's gonna. I don't know the business of baseball well enough. I just have the passion of the fan to say he wouldn't do it. But I mean, there's money.
But if you look at what Scherzer and DeGrom are gonna get, right? Like if you look at those contracts, and you say that, I guess Kershaw is going to be a free agent too, theoretically. But like if you look at these things here, I certainly wouldn't say he's a no-brainer to pick that up. I think Boston has to do something to show him that they're invested. And ultimately, we don't know this, but like he knows this. Like, is his arm screwed? Right? Because if he's going to do physicals on other teams, he's obviously not going to go to free agency.
That's true.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he knows that. But I think if he thinks he's healthy, which I think he is, or will be to some extent, I think he could opt out. I think that would be one of the more interesting offseason storylines for me.
Yeah, that's a neat one. The only one opt-out we know of right now is Carlos Correa is no longer a Twin, but I think that might have more to do with just trying to jockey for that long-term contract that he took a high average value with the Twins on a short term, but also put those opt-outs in, or they made sure they were in for this purpose, that he's, kind of solidified himself. But okay, we'll have to watch the Sale one as it goes. So the next one up was, or is still interesting, but it was Jazz Chisholm or our boy Mondesi, and we have the M beside it, but I gotta say, no way I would have been in on Mondesi. So I don't know. So like, we'd have to listen to that episode.
You might have had Chisholm, right? And you just took the M from that. Like, I don't know.
But yeah, and like at the end of the year, Jazz is still poised for big things, but missed a lot of time and did not. And I don't think he ended up coming back for the last series or anything. I believe he was just shut down. And Mondesi needs, in my opinion, to leave KC to go become that bench guy that can become, your stolen base guy who then earns at bats and finds a way back in. We don't want, we don't want that blip that he had to be his only success. Like, cause that was the end of the 2018 season and then the last month of 2020, something like that. I remember he was like the best player in the shortened season. He won leagues because he was a top dog for 4 weeks.
And he could really easily be a non-tender guy. Like, I don't know, like, given that they've got arbitration control and you've got a new front office coming in, right, in Kansas City, I don't know how they're going to play that one, but yeah, like, I mean, just the amount of games alone that he's played is hard to stomach paying him, like, at the end of the day. So he might be cut loose. They don't really need him. They've got a crop of guys coming. So yeah, I mean, that's a non-tender for me. But yeah, it's Chisholm by a mile here. It's not even close, really.
Yeah, as far as production for the year, Mondesi just didn't have time. And when Jazz was in, he was up and down. But I mean, we saw some serious pop from him. Even in our home league, I was trying to acquire him from now league champ Smitty. At the trade deadline, I was trying to get a deal going, but he just didn't want to give me all of his draft picks up high. And I said, you're never going to win if you don't do this. And you know what, Ty? He won. So, and then I didn't make the playoffs, but that's for another episode. Anyway, the next one up is far less exciting. It's the Franmil, who went from Cleveland and then finished the year in Chicago with the Cubs, and Hunter Renfroe, who went from the Red Sox to Milwaukee, had a good year last year, and the Franmil, who did have that crappy year, was a pitcher for the Cubs. He pitched for the Cubs, and Renfroe just took it. But neither of these guys were like, it wasn't good to have rostered either from an impact standpoint.
Well, I mean, Renfroe had a couple good stretches during the year, like where he got a little bit of a heater going. For me, it's Renfroe just because of the defense, right? I mean, that alone, even though they neither of them played a full season, but I think Franmil might have actually played a few more overall. But I mean, it really is an irrelevant toss-up at this point because neither of them were really starters by the end.
Yeah, they were streamers at best this year, and we were both hoping they were going to be impact bats. Even Renfroe, I was getting, the closer to the season, I was getting more and more excited at the potential for Milwaukee to put up runs. So
yeah, agreed.
I mean, here's a whiff of a whiff on the next one, Votto or Jesus Aguilar. And just in case you're wondering who is Jesus Aguilar, he was a useful fantasy player in your, what do you want to say, 16, 20 team leagues and up, or a 15 teamer if you had, middle and corner infields. Started the year with Miami, and he wasn't doing terribly well, but not in the cards for him to stay with the Marlins. He ended the year with Baltimore and played like he was playing with the Orioles at the end of the year. I don't know what in the heck's going to happen for him next year, but Votto was a bust for anybody who got him. And I mean, he finished the year sitting in the stands with fans. So,
yeah, his like Votto, I really don't know. That contract's just such a monster, and in Cincinnati just isn't a place for him to have that last real, gas, if you will. But I don't know what they're gonna do. There might be a money dump somewhere to get him out of there. I just don't know how they're going to play that. But Aguilar is an interesting one for me because every time I watch that guy, I'm impressed by the at-bats that he has. And then every time I look at his stat line, I'm unimpressed.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It just doesn't add up.
Yeah. He protects the plate. He puts some charges into things. And it seems like every game I watch him play, he hits a home run. But he hit 16 this year, which is not overwhelming. 22 the year before. And then a combined, what did he get? 12 in 2019, right? So like, just really weird stat lines. Career OPS of 773 is pretty reasonable, all things said and done. So
I'm assuming this year's OPS tie 660 was a career worst for him. Last year it was 788, which is I think why this conversation preseason had more heat. Votto was like close to 900, I think, OPS guy in 2021. So I think this conversation preseason meant a lot more than it ended up meaning today when we're having the wrap up on it. But I mean, this would also, depending on Aguilar's contractual status next year, this could also be another. This could have a round 2 of who's going to be better at the end of the year with better results for both guys.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Interesting.
Votto finish. Votto only had 322 at bats. Well, I shouldn't say only. That's okay. The 205 average, that's disturbing.
Yeah, and I just got freaked out because on Baseball Reference, on the awards category, has All-Star and then MVP 1, but I didn't realize because I condensed my browser that there was a 6 behind that one. So I was just completely like floored by the fact that he had somehow won an MVP without me knowing. So we're past that. But yeah, let's talk pitching here. In one of the more interesting ones on our list here that, in retrospect, and I said this at the time, Robbie, you wanted to push Thor because you like to stir the pot and you always like to come after Kershaw, who's my guy. And you threw Thor versus Kershaw, and we clearly know at this point how that went. But when you look at it, like Thor really didn't have that awful of a season, right? It wasn't great. It wasn't elite like he has shown flashes of early in his career, but very SP5-ish, right? Like, reasonable MLB pitcher. Whereas Kershaw, although limited innings, 121 innings, 11-3 with 12 quality starts, right? So pretty much what we
12-3. Sorry, Ty. He was 12-3, 137 Ks, 2.28 ERA, and yes, 12 quality starts.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we expected of Kershaw, right? At this point, I think everybody knows Kershaw's still excellent. It's just how many innings and then therefore how many Ks is he going to give you ultimately. So, I mean, for me, it was an easy choice back then. I think you eventually settled on Kershaw after just making some strong points about Thor. I think that's the obvious choice here. Anything else you want to add on that? Like, is there anything here you see moving forward? Like, I think Kershaw is going to go at least 1 year in Texas. I think he's probably. I think he's going to go 2. 1 being a player option. I think that's what's going to happen this offseason because he's from like the Arlington area, or somewhere just around Arlington. So I think given Seager's there, given that team where they could be next season, like Texas could be the second best team in that division next year, very easily.
Wow. So it'll be them in Seattle. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but no, I'm just saying if you add pitching, right? If you add a little pitching to that Texas team, the offense is going to be there. Like they have 2 or 3 guys that took major steps forward this year. Like Leody Taveras, who everyone gave up on, had a sneaky good season, right? We talked about Nate Lowe a lot lately. And then Semien in the second half, I think he might have been the number 1 second baseman in the second half.
He certainly made up for. Yeah, he certainly made up for the April-May disappointment that he was to everybody, and that terrible start has been erased with the final line for Semien. But yeah, I mean that could be interesting. I just wanted to say with Thor in general, Ty, that neither of these guys were excellent for you if you did roster them. But of the 2, I would say Kershaw was more disappointing, although his line was better. Like he had 2 more wins. He had 40 more Ks. He had an ERA 1.5 less, and he had 3 more quality starts. But he just didn't pitch enough. And that's the problem with Kershaw, is that as a fantasy guy, not that Thor did, the innings difference was what? 12,
13.
13.
Yeah.
But it's just that you didn't know what to expect with Thor, what was like a reasonable expectation. But with Kershaw, as a guy who's got him in our home league, he is so frustrating to have because you need him to be your ace, and he's not. He's your bonus. He's your, when Rich Hill came back and had a good stretch, what 2 years ago or something, whatever it was. That's kind of where Kershaw is. He's always going to be good if he's pitching.
We are not comparing Kershaw to Rich Hill right now.
I just did it.
No.
They both throw with their left hand. They both play baseball. Yep. They were teammates.
No.
Kershaw said that Hill was an amazing pitcher, but it's when healthy. And that's the problem that I'm having here.
I immediately regret this decision.
Yeah, that's gonna be a no for me. Like never can that be spoken again.
I just did it. I'll do it again. I will.
I know this is Dying on the Hill episode, but that is the wrong approach to that.
Well, okay, fine. Let's move off. Let's go to like a far less intriguing conversation. Rafael Ortega of the Cubs, who was coming in, getting a bit of deeper league, NFBC type league love, and a bit of the dynasty deep league love this offseason, and against Jose Siri, who only I loved. And that's okay. And that's, like you just said, Ty, the Dying on the Hill episode. So I was thinking Houston was going to give Siri time, and getting really frustrated in April and May when he wasn't getting time. He ended up going to Tampa Bay, but the final line for the year, 301 at bats, 7 dingers, which he had 4 last year or the previous year in 46 at bats to his 300 this year. Anyway, 14 stolen bases for him, which was the plus, a 213 average and a 607 OPS. But he was just terrible for stretches of the year, and then had pockets post trade to Tampa Bay where he was good and very streamer worthy. I don't know what to do with him next year, but Ortega, 316 at bats, 7 dingers, 35 RBIs, 12 stolen bases, but a better average, 241. And I mean, the K percentage was better for Ortega, but the overall numbers and OPS, neither of them were useful to anyone. And I'm sure in redraft, they were off rosters.
Well, I think for me, at the end of the day, Siri has way more upside than Ortega, especially when Judge signs in Chicago. The reality of Ortega, the reality of Ortega being like a real solid piece in your roster for me has never been high, right? Like even in deeper leagues, he's a 4th outfielder at best for me. Siri could be a guy, even in a weak season, he scored 53 runs, right? That speed matters, right? Like when he's on the base, he's a problem.
Yeah.
And he plays
phenomenal in Tampa Bay.
Defense. Yeah,
and if in Tampa Bay, they can maximize that, right? As long as Manuel Margot, though, Ty, that's the problem in Tampa Bay is they like Margot. What's Siri going to do this offseason?
But they immediately put Margot in a corner the minute they got Siri, right? Like Siri's the center fielder. Like they know that. Like Kiermaier's gone. They picked up Siri. Like there's not a better place for Siri to find success. Like Tampa, we talk about this all the time. If Tampa trades for a guy, we automatically like him. Yeah, we automatically like him. Right? If they draft him, we're like, yeah, maybe. But if they trade for him, he's a guy. And I like the upside here. I like the power that's still undiscovered. Like the K rate is the thing. And Tampa's a place that doesn't traditionally care about the K rate as long as you hit a ground ball to second when there's a runner on third. So those are things that matter from a stat line perspective. If he hits 230 and bumps 65 to 70 RBIs next year in center field, that matters. That's an outcome we're going to be able to live with, because that 14 stolen bases might get close to 30 with some of the rule changes, right? These are things that I think progression is going to happen for Siri. I don't see it for Ortega. That's the outcome for me at this point.
Yeah, as the offseason officially begins for MLB and rolls on, and we see what moves Tampa Bay makes, there certainly could be a path that leads us to have high hopes for Siri. But I think we're going to need spring training to which, I mean, I know you're excited for that, Ty, but I think we're going to need it to really sort out what Tampa Bay appears to be planning. Because if they are going to give Siri starting time, that's huge for the reasons you mentioned. If they're not, I still could see a path to him being a productive player, but certainly teams and league dependent. You need him to just be considered a bench bat. You don't want to go into the season banking on him. I don't think that it's a smart decision at this moment in a 30-team league if your bench is like 8 to be considering him as a starter. He has to be one of your 8, though. Like, I think that's the target that you want for him, because that's how you would win your league, is getting a legit starter and having a guy like Siri kicking around as your depth piece when it appears at this moment that he's going to get opportunity.
Yeah, there's by no means am I hanging my hat on him, but I like him as a breakout guy. I think there's something there. The speed matters. Speed on the turf matters, right? All of those things play better than they did for him in Houston. So I like it. I just something to watch moving forward. An interesting one that's just painful looking at this list, because this was clearly like a homer out for you when you put this one together.
Totally.
Acuna versus Madrigal, and everyone's like, pardon me. The reality here is that this is the most lopsided fight since David and Goliath. And to be fair, that's how much bigger Acuna is than Madrigal. So this actually fits the bill. But the reality is it's not close. Acuna is better. Even the stolen bases for me, I talked about it all offseason, were significantly better than I was expecting. And frankly,
29.
Those are things that, I mean, the 29 with coming off a knee surgery, like, okay, that's kind of good.
It was the power that was down, right? That was the issue.
Yeah.
It was from 24 dingers in under 300 at bats in 2021 to 15 in 467 at bats. That was where people were kind of like, huh. And that's, I think, what you were just going to say with the OPS.
Yeah. Like, I mean, for me, like, if I'm drafting Acuna in the top 10, I'm not happy with his stat line. Right. Like, that's just the reality. And so that part, I think we did hit on, and I like that trajectory, which is, I think, maybe where some of the debate came in, was like, how long is Acuna going to be out, and is he going to be immediately back? And frankly, the first 2 or 3 weeks back were his best weeks. He just wasn't the same guy, and maybe we'll see that in 25 with full recovery and a little bit more time to rehab. But the power is a concern, because when that power comes back, are those strikeout numbers going to skyrocket again? Like, these are things that we're going to be watching for. I still firmly believe we've seen the best of his stolen bases, and I think we will see this be the last little blip on that radar. Like, I don't think he steals 30 bases again, in my opinion.
I feel like this is how you're opening up our home league offseason trade talks. You're looking to downplay Acuna, and you're like, because I've got Acuna and Soto and Michael Harris, and I don't want all 3 of them as keepers. And you're gonna be like, well, Acuna's toast, so just give me him.
Yeah, he's terrible.
Yeah. All right, I'll hand him over.
I don't know. I don't know. We're going to discuss this on air, just in case I need to leverage someone else against you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's not do it. Let's Let's go to the next one, because this one was really tight and we weren't sure which way it was going to go. And baby, Trevor Bauer or Roberto Osuna. So,
yeah. Question for 2022. Like, how do you feel about this one, Universe?
Yeah, it is not in the cards. It'll just be interesting to see Trevor Bauer. Will we see Bauer in 2023? Osuna, I think, is tostado, and that's it. Mexican ball is what he will be playing.
But he's in Japan. He went to Japan, right? Like,
Osuna went to Japan? When?
Yeah, like that's I don't know, 2022.
No way, really? I thought he went back to Mexico.
He was, and then he got picked up. Forget where he went. But I mean, that's kind of the path. That's kind of the path back, right? Like, that's the I mean, if there is a path, that's the path.
Right. Yeah, you got to go over there and dominate. But
I'm almost
he was doing that in MLB. He was dominating MLB, and they just whatever. We'll see what happens. The next one was more interesting to me because it was poised or whatever. You asked it. He said Bubic, Lynch, Singer, Keller, Cowher. And for anyone who doesn't know, those were supposed to be good pitchers that were all part of Kansas City Royals organization. I have burned the hat. It is gone. No, I haven't burned it. But you said pick one for the next 3 years that you cannot drop and you have to start every week. And I believe I picked Singer. And after the first year of this, Singer is the only guy that you would have wanted to do that with. However, the start of the year was so sour for Brady. He did not get a spot in the rotation. He was, I think, an RP for week 1, then sent down, and then started in AAA, came back up, in his first official start of the season was 5 innings pitched, but he had 10 Ks, and then
who
had
did
a
you
great
actually
season.
pick? I forget.
Well, I think I did pick Singer, but I'm going to have to go back in and actually find, I couldn't find it in the notes who I did pick. So I'm going to have to go
hard
back
to believe you really liked Bubic.
Well, I liked him, and I liked Lynch, but also I have Singer in my dynasty rankings 12th headed into 2022. So he was the highest Lynch. So,
and I think I said this when we talked about this. I still like Lynch long term as to be the best of this group.
Well, here's the numbers for everybody. So Cowher's the first one to get out of the way. He had 83 1/3 innings in AAA, so that should let you know all you needed to know right there. 4-10 record, 88 Ks though, so that's what he's good at, striking people out. But a 6.16 ERA, and then 15 horrendous innings in MLB. Bubic, 129 innings pitched, 3-13 record, 110 Ks, 7 quality starts, 5.58 ERA. I assume he'll be in the rotation next year, but he'll be like the 5th, 6th dude. And then we might be looking at some issues with him and for dynasty purposes. Then you get to Lynch, 127 innings pitched, 4-12 record, 120 Ks, only 3 quality starts though. But a 4.96 ERA. Not that that's good, but just, a bit more control from that pitcher. But Bubic did have 7 quality starts. So there's silver lining for one. And then with Lynch, it's really like, what in the hell's happening? But then you get to Singer, 153 1/3 innings, 10-5 record, 150 Ks, 14 quality starts, and a 3.23 ERA. Circle him on the board. He's the KC, number 1 for next year. You've got Greinke out of the pitcher, so it's reasonable to expect Singer, Lynch, Bubic part of that scenario. They did have Hernandez, I believe is the name, that was coming into the year looking to, jerk things around within that rotation. Like Singer was out in April.
Yeah.
So a lot has changed in KC. And like you said, with the new front office, they might just move some bodies here, and we'll have to see what happens. But the next question is for you, Ty.
And new pitching coach coming in. And just to backtrack really quickly, Osuna, 29 innings, 29.2 in Japan. He played for Chiba Lotte. I don't know if I'm saying that anywhere close to correct, but anyway,
you said it in like a Spanish way.
Yeah, I don't
Chiba Lotte. He's in the KBO.
So 10 saves, 9 holds in those 29 innings, only 3 earned runs, 0.91 ERA. So
you got a K count in 29 innings?
Yeah, he's 32.
Should be north of 70.
In a contact league?
I don't know. Yeah, those guys do know how to hit a ball. That's true.
They put balls in play over there. So yeah, I agree. I mean, I still think there's a path back for him as a baseball player. I think there's guys that have done just as bad of things and been given a second chance. I find it hard to believe that he's not going to be.
Well, they play in the NFL.
Also true. These are a fact, or own an NFL team, one of the two. But
this conversation, oh my goodness, is anyone who's just imagine, Ty, for a second, someone's never listened to this podcast before, and like we're 49 minutes in right now, and they're like, these guys won't shut up about guys who are like roster peripheral dudes. Like, have they ever won a fantasy league? Yeah, but you know what leagues are more fun? Bigger leagues, bigger rosters, where these peripheral guys, or the bounce back of an Osuna coming back to the league, or Bauer, whatever. This is where you win bigger leagues. If you're a 10 to 12 team guy, you're going to find some interesting things here, but you're also going to be introduced to players who you probably don't care at all about if you're sticking with the small leagues. But if you're at all interested in expanding to, 20 plus team leagues, we are the home for you to learn more names. And if you're still scratching your head, what was Ortega versus Siri? How was that a hotly debated thing? Well, that's how you get down into the weeds, but that's also why while we're recording.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, for me, like this next question caused me to do some drinking this year on the arms side. I had some injuries. I also had a lot of success on the arm side, but this particular list hurt me in a big way. And this was Christian Javier, Casey Mize, and Shane Baz. Right, Baz obviously
same
had
scenario,
a
Ty. Same
season.
scenario. So they all knew
Yeah.
you had to pick one that you would start for the next 3 years, no dropping. And again, I'll have to go back and listen, and I'll get the names of who we actually did pick. But for the
I would
sake
find
of,
it. I would find it hard
Baz.
to believe I didn't pick Baz. Like I'm pretty confident
Right.
I would have picked Baz without really a second thought.
Okay.
Christian Javier is a guy I believed in. Mize would have been my last pick in this list, but it would have been Baz, Javier, Mize for me for sure. But the reality is, like, even Javier murdered me this year because I had him in our home league, and I have him in other leagues, but I have him in the home league. I pretty much own him everywhere because I've been in on him for a while. But in the home league, it hurt real bad because my pitching was really strong in that league, and I actually dropped him before the huge strikeout game and before the no, and he was still bouncing back between the rotation and starting, and I didn't need bullpen help. So it left me in a really tough spot where I had to make a decision. In a week, I was streaming for the win. So I cut him, and immediately he got amazing and pretty much lights out the rest of the year, which I'm not surprised by, but that's the only league I didn't really own him in, and it hurt me real bad. So yeah, for me, it would have been buys moving forward. It's Javier now, but it would have been buys at the beginning of the year, or Baz at the beginning of the year, and I think I'm going to stick with that because I still think Baz has that upside, and I hope they just gave him a full year off to get him back on track for that.
Yeah, I mean, 27 innings pitched, then Tommy John, and then Casey Mize, unfortunately, 10 innings pitched and hurt. So it was only a one-horse race for year one of this 3-year. But the fun part about the dynasty is that we keep track year over year. And one guy that Ty would not shut up about for a few years before he finally popped last year was his boy, Tyler O'Neill. I think we can say it's official now, right, Ty? This will be the offseason where there is no more Grichuk talk, and it's just going to be, dying on the O'Neill hill. Is that right?
Well,
do you want to make that statement now?
But the best part is that in the leagues I don't own Tyler O'Neill, he had a rough season, and I can go get him again.
You can go get him.
Right?
Yeah.
I can go get him in the rest of the leagues that I don't have him in. And that's great because I think Ronnie owns him in one of those leagues. And it's just going to be fun to try to sell him some crappy player that he thinks is going to be great, or that can help him figure out how to win money by being bad at fantasy baseball.
Yeah, if anyone here enjoys fantasy baseball, there is the official troll of fantasy baseball, Roto Ronnie, at Roto Ronnie on Twitter, who believes that the goal of fantasy baseball is to, as he puts it, cash. I'm using air quotes here. It's not about winning for him like a league or being a champion. It's about not losing your money, which I guess has probably more to do with the fact that he puts it in his purse if his wife lets him hold the purse when they're out. But the thing back here with O'Neill, Ty, was who has more home runs at the end of the season? Tyler O'Neill, who was in the 3-hole and had 34 dingers in 2021, or Blue Jays Teoscar Hernandez, who ended up with 32, and he was hitting mostly out of the 4-ish hole. Yeah, I think that's right.
I don't even remember who I would have picked in this one. Like, I don't know that I would have picked Tyler O'Neill here. Like, I expected some recoil from O'Neill this year. I didn't obviously plan for him to be hurt, but I just don't know what I would have picked because, like, I also like Teoscar, and Teoscar, for all intents and purposes, puts more balls in play and was in arguably a better lineup, right? So I don't know how I would have answered that originally.
We'll have to circle back, but Hernandez had 25, O'Neill had 14. It wasn't close. Again, it was injury related, but O'Neill still was north of 300 at bat, so he had the opportunity. He just wasn't, hot guy.
In the first stretch of games that he did play, he struggled big time. He just didn't find it, and then he did find it, then got hurt, then found it briefly, then lost it, then found it again. So, like, I think a full run up with a little bit more health, I think is good. He's not going to have any competition like he did entering this year for the at-bats. Like, that outfield was crowded. They've cleared some way in St. Louis for him. So I think ultimately he's gonna resurface. And same with Teoscar. I think both these guys are north of 30, assuming they stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean, St. Louis is St. Louis as well as Harrison Bader are going to be hot off-season topics for fantasy players to see what people feel about that outfield in St. Louis and Bader as a Yankee, because that could be interesting. Anyway, more stolen bases. Cedric Mullins or Miles Straw, and both for reference had 30 in 2021. This year, Miles Straw was getting hyped so much in redraft. I think it stayed away in Dynasty, but he was formerly of Houston, traded to Cleveland. And I mean, prior to this season, Cleveland had not done anything positive with an outfielder in years. So I was not on that train. I picked Mullins. Mullins had 34 for the year. And, Bob is your uncle. So that's an easy one there, Ty. Really nothing else to say on that. Mullins just had more than Miles. Next one up here.
Question, which is for you. So that's
Yeah. Next one up was more runs for the year. My boy Trey Turner, or your boy Fernando. I was just gonna say STD, but that's not right. What do you call PED for Fernando PED Tatis? And then my reply here is yikes. We'll say, will Ty say Turner is now the better player for the next 4 years? I said it last year.
No,
Turner,
I mean it's
got one.
Tatis for days. It's not even close. Like, so we have 1,000 at bats career for Tatis. We have 3,400 for Trey Turner. Okay, so the only category that we can arguably say Trey Turner has a clear advantage in is stolen bases, right? So like that's it. And then when you start comparing the other categories, like a career 965 OPS for Tatis is up against a career 842 for Turner. Like, no knock on Turner, clearly a good player. Like, I'm not trying to dump on the guy, but in those 3,400 at bats, 124 home runs versus Tatis's 81, right? So in
but
25% of the at bats almost, right? He has
think about how
75% of his home run total.
But Ty, think how big Tatis's blood cells are on account of the PEDs that he takes that enlarge them so that he has an unfair advantage, possibly 25% larger than Turner's pre getting busted.
Yeah, but he has less ringworm. So
oh man. Oh wow. Okay, well, let's move off to that one. More Ks. Robbie Ray, whose K per 9 in 2021 was 11.54 for 248 total, or DeGrom 14.24, which I think was historic, K to 9, and 146 Ks. Obviously, he didn't have a full season. And wouldn't you know it, Ty, Robbie Ray comes through again, 212 Ks and 189 innings pitched, less impressive. But DeGrom only had 102 in 64.
I'm interested to see how long it will take him to recover. I mean, his neck has to be sore after Jordan went Yahtzee off him out of the bullpen.
You must love that. Yeah.
I did every second of that. I did. But it's exactly what I said, is that you sit on the fastball on the inner half to the lefty. Like that's how you beat Robbie Ray. You lay off the fastballs away and the sliders away to the lefty or down and into the righty, and you hit the fastball in. So that's the book on Ray. And I'm shocked more teams don't pick up on it. But at the end of the day, he made a really bad pitch to a really good hitter, and that's it. Now, strikeout wise, nobody's ever argued that Robbie Ray can strike people out. It's that he gives up the bomb. It's that he gives up the hard contact, and he used to, and he does less of this now, is he walks less guys. But the problem with that is that he doesn't nibble as much, and that's where the home runs start to creep up. So I think that's going to be the back half of his career. I think that home run total is going to continuously increase. DeGrom for me is my favorite free agent this year because it is just, there's no telling where he's going to go, because I don't see him staying in New York. I just don't.
It's going to be a fun offseason with some of these guys. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly haven't even thought about it from that standpoint as to where he would go, or, what would happen with that Mets team, because if money's not an option. And a fun fact here, Ty, is that the luxury tax for next year will be $233 million, which is a $22 million increase over this year.
Mm-hmm.
So the ability for teams to spend money, or if they want to get under the cap so that they don't continue to have the escalating penalties, this could be a hold'em year for some of the big boys, so that they can get under that mark just for the year to reset the table for next year. And I mean, we don't know how that's going to go. It only takes one team, right, to go crazy and be the high bidder, if that is what happens with a guy like DeGrom. But the next one's yours,
the Mets going to be interesting. Yeah, the next one here, more Ks, Moncada or Chapman. We had 25% K mark for Moncada on his career. Chapman had 190 plus in 2021. Chapman, had a decent step forward this year. He's always going to strike out. And if you watch the Jays, and I've talked about this a lot, like Chapman hits a lot of balls hard, but I feel for the guy. That guy got rung up on more bad pitches than I think I've ever seen a single player deal with. Like they were bad, and he's an absolute champion. He just kind of shook his head and went sat down. But that's what he does, and he's a patience guy. He takes the third strikes because he's patient and looking for the walks. So for me, as a fantasy guy, you can take on Chapman because the walks are going to make up a little bit for the higher K number, and then the power number's there. Next year's a contract year. Right now, I think the Jays are going to sign him in the offseason, but I like him heading into next year. Moncada had a really decent finish. Like he had an awful season overall, and ultimately had the lower K total, but played significantly less games, right? And I think that's the issue here. I think entering the season, I probably would have said Chapman. I think you would have said Moncada. I don't actually know what I said on this one either. But
I guess I'm going to have to go back. Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and listen to this darn episode.
I just don't think, given the amount of pushing of Yoan Moncada that I have done, that I would have taken Yoan Moncada in this question.
He was your boy once upon a time.
That's what I'm saying.
From a percentage standpoint, though, Chapman had a 32% K rate this year. Moncada had a 29%. But as you said, there was a big at-bat difference between the two. 111 total Ks for Moncada, 170 for Chapman, which is down from last year for Chapman, which, I mean, I don't know where we want to go with that as far as success or failure. He was on a better team and still struck out a ton and ended a lot of innings. But
anyway. And not that it's elite, but Yoan Moncada hit 253 with a 767 OPS in the last 28 days to end the season, right? So, there was a bit of a positive step forward for him. Not that it's enough to, get the band back together, but at the same time, I like him moving forward. I actually think, given where the White Sox are at, they're going to have a really tough decision this offseason. They've got a couple outfielders and a couple infielders, but they don't have the depth, right, to be the team. So it'll be interesting to see what they do this offseason, how far they'll push or how hard they'll push. But I do think Yoan Moncada, if they don't press another all-in button this offseason, they don't try to sign another big ticket, I think Moncada is a trade candidate, just given where he's at on his contract. I think he could be somebody that's dangled for pitching. Just switch hitter. Lots of teams are going to be interested in that, can play multiple positions. So, yeah, I think he could be an interesting guy that gets moved this season. The last one here is definitely a you question because this one hurts me to even read it.
Well, if you don't recall, Ty, way back when, 7 months ago, even into February, March, everybody was excited about Bailey Ober and Joe Ryan with the Twins. These two pitchers were going to be breakout pitchers. So, to sum it up, Ober, 51 innings pitched, 2-3 record, 3.18 ERA, 47 Ks, 2 quality starts. Joe Ryan, 147 innings pitched, 13-8 record, 3.55 ERA, 151 Ks, 11 quality starts. It was Joe Ryan. I think even with the Ryan stat line, there was more hype and a higher expectation than what we got out of him. And for dynasty purposes, I think both guys were significantly under the radar acquisitions because Joe Ryan came over in 2021 from the Rays, I believe,
Yeah, but
Minnesota?
that was a decent. That was a Nelson Cruz trade though. Like that was
Is that what it
ticket.
was? Okay.
Yeah.
No,
like
I'm not saying that was crap, but what I'm saying is that's when Joe Ryan came on the spectrum of, hey, here's a guy, here's a cusp guy, and then all of a sudden he shot up over the like post trade deadline 2021 through the offseason, and then it became a real popular redraft thing to roster Joe Ryan. That's what I'm saying. And we put it in here because we didn't really like either dude, but we were going to discuss it because we do what the people want.
I find both of these guys to fit the category I talk about a lot, which is the guys that have immediate success and then eventually the book is out on them. And the second time through the league, like they get picked apart a little bit. And, you know, unfortunately for these guys, like I tend to be right on these things. See Spencer Howard as an example.
Oh, come on, you wait. Yeah. 2023 is the year of Howard.
With the year, he all of a sudden gets pitches that do things that they didn't do before. I mean,
yeah, they missed that.
It's funny, like, well, it's funny because like in our office, one of our guys is a friend of Hunter Brown's, and he's a guy that has obviously electric stuff, but what he doesn't have is something that bores in on righties. And for me, it's a significant concern for him. The second time through, he throws a really hard slider, and he's got a great fastball. No arguments there. But without something for me that goes in, like he's not a sustainable long-term ace, which he has 2+ pitches. Maybe even 3 if you count the curveball, because it's pretty good itself. But still nothing that beats the righties, or you can set to hide the fastball, right? Or offset the fastball a little bit. So yeah, I think for me, Joe Ryan fits that category a little bit. Less from the mixed side, but just that the stuff for me it's not elite. I just don't see it as elite. That's the part I struggle with Joe Ryan.
Yeah, I'm not too pumped about either of these guys right now, and we're going to need to see Minnesota make moves this offseason. I mean, they went to try to add the oldest rotation in baseball last year with all the guys that they took on, so we'll see what the game plan is this offseason. But back to Spencer Howard real quick, Ty, just so you know, he did lower his ERA from 7.43. It was 7.41 this year. Thank you. Less innings pitched too. Anyway, that's it. That's what we discussed before the season started, when everything was fun and exciting. And then, you know, hearts were broken, bats were broken, and pitchers were checked for crap on their bodies. So
yeah. I mean, it's good, and this might be one of our shortest episodes in recent times, so good on us. It's a good one for us to keep short because it is recapping some things, but you know, lots of good stuff here. If you disagree with some of these things, make sure you hit us up at DingerSpot on Twitter, and obviously stay tuned for some of the next stuff. The next one is guys that we loved and hit on and missed epically, which is always a good one for us. We like to, again, stick to the accountability this time of year. Unlike a lot of the other podcasts you're going to listen to where they're immediately on to telling you who they got right. It's just as important to look at who we got wrong and
why.
Help us. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. So great spot to leave, Robbie. Until next time, it's been Rob